everything costs so much money and jobs aren't going up. You're not getting paid more. More people are getting laid off as companies are making more and more and more. And capitalism is a curse, but we're all trapped in it. And that is the problem. That is the problem. We are all trapped in this. And if we acknowledge that, if we acknowledge what a trap capitalism is and we acknowledge it, everything comes crumbling down. So we don't acknowledge it. We have to just pretend it's not real and get on with our day and ignore the inequality and ignore everyone else's pain, including our own. So originally, right, I made this video. It was going to be like this whole long video essay. I wrote a 13,000 word script for this video. And that is a long script. It is a lot of work. And I was filming it and I just wasn't happy with how it was coming out. Oh, look, we gotta have a real talk about the girl bossification of like everything that people go I just decided I'm just going to talk about this like I would other videos. And I do want to say right off the bat what this video is and what it isn't. I'm not here to tell anyone what they believe is wrong. I am not here to tell anyone that they're, ridiculous or dumb for believing in any kind of thing. But I do want to call out some things that I have seen and I have noticed. I kind of want to start on when I was originally researching this video, one of the things I noticed, I was researching the book The Secret, because I feel like The Secret is where this all starts, right? That came out in 2006. And I feel like before then, there was a lot of new age stuff that was going on in the 2000s and the 90s. But I don't feel like it really took off in the way that we see now until 2006, The Secret comes out. And so I was reading a lot of reviews of the book, and most of them I think pretty much seem to agree with the premise. A lot of people thought it was a little too oversimplified, that it was missing some key things, but it generally, I think a lot of people seem to agree with it. But there was a certain subsection of reviews that were yeah, this is a con job and anybody who believes it is a sucker and deserves to be, suckered out of their money. And so the reason I'm starting this video here is because I just want to talk about my experiences with getting super into manifesting and law of attraction and sort of what happened to me as a result and how I've kind of been dealing with that ever since, I guess. So I guess it's probably a good idea right at the top to give a content warning that I am going to be talking about mental health and medical issues and just a lot of things that could be triggering to people, especially regarding mental health. So I just want to make that clear right up front, because there was definitely a time in my life where hearing this kind of stuff and even talking about it, to be honest, does kind of trigger some things for me. So I just want to be very, very clear right up front that if that's not something you want to hear about, skip to this time frame, it's okay. You won't really miss anything. I'm just giving context of how this came up for me, right? To start with, I started getting into manifesting spaces around 2019, 2020. And it came about, I think it was maybe a video was recommended to me or something like that, or I had heard the term, because it's something that I feel is very ubiquitous. It's very memeified. I think, good vibes only. It's a t-shirt slogan, right? I think the idea of manifesting a better tomorrow or something like that, or we need to manifest this or manifest that, I think is a meme at this point, right? I think everyone's said it and used it as more of a joke, but some people definitely believe in it. It's kind of theater kids who are taking things a little bit too far. So there certainly are people who very strongly believe in this, and that's fine. I am not here to tell anyone they are wrong for believing in this. I am not here to tell anyone that I think that they're stupid. I am here to simply talk about and to call out what I think are some problems that are not discussed, right? I think there are some very real problems in the community that are not discussed. And, you know, I have a problem with the fact that mental health isn't discussed. I have a problem with the fact that there are very manipulative tactics that are used. And so that's what I'm going to be calling out specifically. So 2018, it started at the tail end of 2017, right? I had my first STD scare in September of 2017. It was right before my birthday. I don't remember. I think I was turning 26, 27, something like that. And it was very, very scary because I had never dealt with that before. I was in my first kind of major relationship. We weren't even really doing all that much, but it was enough that like I was concerned. So I wanted to get tested. So I decided to go to Planned Parenthood to get tested. And I've never talked about this before on my channel because I was kind of like embarrassed. And then I realized that I am playing into a lot of these slut shaming tropes that I'm against. And I'm kind of promoting this idea that getting tested is shameful, or that needing to get tested is shameful. Not that it's anyone's business, but it feels like I was keeping this to myself because I was personally ashamed that this was something that came up, when it's not shameful to get tested. In fact, it is very important, and shame is often what leads people not to get tested. So I did kind of want to destigmatize that for myself and for my audience, because it is something that happened. And that's not why everything started with me, but that I'm just giving you the context. So I decided to go to Planned Parenthood because I am a supporter of Planned Parenthood, and I was donating to them at the time, and I thought, okay, this is perfect. You know, this is a situation where this is what Planned Parenthood does. And I stupidly thought, you know, hey, I'm trans, I've had blood tests before. A lot of my blood tests are usually something where I have to fast. You don't have to fast for hormone tests, but, you know, my doctors always want to test everything with me, you know, because I'm fat, plus size, whatever you want to call it. So my doctors like to test everything. So I am used to fasting. And the only time they had for a blood test was what would have been after my work day, which ended at 3:45, and I think the test was at 4, and I had not eaten the entire day. So that, on top of probably low blood sugar and whatever else, stress, anxiety, led to a pretty unfortunate situation in which I had a very, very terrifying experience where I kind of genuinely didn't know what was happening to me. I think probably the most likely scenario was that I fainted, but I don't know, because no one told me in the moment what was happening to me. But it was just like, you know, it was very, very scary. And I could my vision kind of went to a point, like a small kind of point. I'm like shaking telling this story because it's still, I have like PTSD from this whole thing. Like, it still gives me anxiety and like to talk about, but I want to talk about it because it's giving context. So heart racing, vision going to a point, and I could barely hear, everything sounded far away, literally thought I was dying. And that's a bit dramatic, but that is how I felt. And eventually they gave me water. It was fine. I was fine. I still had to see the doctor after that. That was just getting the actual blood taken. And so you can imagine having to see the doctor after that and be like, yeah, the doctor didn't mention it, didn't be like, oh, are you okay? Like, I heard you had nope, nothing, just, you know, like it never happened. So I'm like, okay, cool. But what followed was that, you know, they told me, okay, you know, we'll contact you in about 2 weeks with your results. Never heard anything in 2 weeks. I had to finally call them and be like, hey, what's going on with my results? And they're like, oh yeah, you're fine. And I was like, well, that would have been nice to know, because I've spent the last 2 weeks freaking out about this. It would have been nice to know that I'm okay, or that, you know, I'm not, that I, you know, this isn't something I have to keep worrying about and trying to figure out. And I will admit, I was not, I'm not proud to say that I was very like terrified because of all the stigma. And also I thought, I really was very dramatic about it. I realize that now, and I'm not proud of that. But again, I'm giving context here. So I just have to be honest about how the headspace I was in. I was scared, and I was scared too because no one said anything, and I was scared because no one told me what the fuck happened to me during my blood test. And I was scared because pretty much right after I started having dizzy spells. And every time I talk about this, I always feel like there has to be a better word, right? There has to be a better descriptor than dizzy spells, because I feel like dizzy spells does not do it justice. Because dizzy spells really makes it sound like when you're sitting in a chair and you spin around really fast and you're like, woo, you know, that kind of thing, or when you're drunk or something like that. But that wasn't what I was experiencing. What I was experiencing was, you know, do you know that feeling when you're sitting in a chair that goes, like, it's an adjustable chair, like usually an office chair, and it like kind of is broken, so it falls out and you're like, whoa, shit. It's like that, except it's every moment of every day. It's first thing in the morning, last thing at night. It's when I'm standing, when I'm laying, when I'm sitting. It's all the time. And this happened to me for 2 years. And I still have bouts of it. It is something that I've since learned is like stress induced. So I'm better at managing it now. And there are a lot of people that actually have this and have gone through this. And so it's comforting to hear from other people who have gone through this and experienced this. But yeah, it's something that I feel like when you say the word dizzy spell, it just does not do it justice. And when you're experiencing this for 2 years and you've been to a bunch of doctors, no one has any clue what's wrong with you. No one has any idea what to do for you. You start to feel like something, like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but clearly something is wrong with me. This thing is happening to me, but nobody like, there's nothing medically wrong with me, right? And it did turn out that part of it was I did have low vitamin D. So I take medication for that. And, again, stress and anxiety, I think those played a part. Unfortunately for me, this experience gave me more anxiety. And so it was like I was getting anxiety because of it, and that was adding to it. So it was just kind of like, everything is adding to itself, basically, is what was happening to me. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. And again, this went on for 2 years. Oh, so that's how things started, right? That was in September. In December, my ex and I end up breaking up. And I won't get into the details because it's, it doesn't really matter. It has nothing to do with this story about why we broke up. But we broke up and we were like, okay, we're going to be friends. We had a calm breakup. It wasn't a big deal. And that promptly ended very quickly. We got into a big fight after we were already broken up. So that January, we got into a fight and we just never spoke again. And we've never spoken since. And so that was very stressful. I was also working at a job that made me very miserable. I was in a situationship with a coworker who was married, who I was deeply in love with. They did not have a good relationship with their wife. So it was kind of just this whole thing, and I was definitely taking on their emotional baggage. Again, all things I'm not proud of in hindsight, but that's your 20s. Not that everyone does that in their 20s, let me not. But that was my 20s, right? So you got that going on. And then in a matter of 6 months, in the end of February, I get a call, or my mother gets a call, because she and I and my father were all working at the same company that no longer exists, which is hilarious. We're all working at the same company. We were all working in the same building as one another. So we get a call from his manager, not supervisor, his direct manager, who said, John hasn't shown up in 2 days. And my father wasn't someone who liked working necessarily, but he did seem to like this job to some degree. He had a lot of friends there. And so hearing he hasn't shown up and we don't know where he is was concerning. And we pretty much knew, I think, right then and there that it was, game over, right? Father had COPD. He was diagnosed with COPD in 2016. Or no, 2014, because I was still in college. And I remember being taken out of my class to be told that he was in the hospital, and having to go to the hospital and just be like, okay, this is strange. And so he got 4 years, which is, if you know anything about COPD, it's not super I mean, I don't know like what the record stats are, but I think like he did get quite a long time after being diagnosed with COPD. And so, you know, we got the call. We go down to where he was living at the time. And my mother said she could hear the TV on. I couldn't hear it. It was very windy. I remember that. But basically, I mean, it was like end of February. It was like early March, I think, by the time we got the call. But suffice it to say, she was like pretty sure he was gone. I was pretty sure he was gone, because where else was he going to go? I even made a joke. I was like, he's not interesting enough to have been kidnapped. Like, he wasn't going to go anywhere. So like, I think he's dead. And sure enough, it was my day off the next day, because this was on a Thursday. And, you know, I'd been having the dizzy spells. And so I spent a lot of my days off napping after I'd wake up, because I had nothing better to do. And, you know, the dizzy spells are very debilitating. And so I was like, I'm just going to sleep. And I remember getting a call from my cousin. And she said, Sissy, your dad's dead. And I was just like, and she's crying as she's saying this. And I was just kind of like, what? But at the same time, you know, dizzy spell hits, because it's been 6 months since, you know, this started, and 6 months since my breakup. And this is a lot that's happening to me, right? So dizzy spell hits. Felt like I was going to pass out. Felt like I, you know, cried. It was very, very emotional. I didn't know what to do. I was just in an utter state of shock. And I had to talk to, I think, a coroner, or I don't even remember who the fuck I spoke to be honest. It all was in a blur. And I was just like, you know, what do I do? Who do I talk to? And they're like, okay, well, you have to call the funeral home that's, you know, this area, because this is where he lives. I'm in Henderson. He was in Vegas. So, you know, then that becomes my problem, right? Then I'm next of kin, so I have to now deal with his body. And his mother wanted him to be buried in California, and we lived in Vegas. So there's a whole big system of what you have to do to have a body moved. It's a whole big process. It's very, very annoying. And I basically had to sign him out. Like, you know, sign out his body and say, yes, I certify that his mother can deal with this. I don't really want to have anything to do with this. And so I didn't. And that was a very stressful experience. So that all happens. And the funeral happens at the end of March. So I was, you know, working this job, already having troubles. I was pretty much at that point already, I was running out of sick time, because I kept having to go home because of the dizzy spells. And so it was like, you know, I had, thankfully the company gave me, you know, 3 days for the funeral, but they were like, you have to take this all at once. So I had to go to work, you know, that Sunday after my father died. And I had a lot of people who were, you know, work colleagues who knew my father and who were telling me about what a great man he was, which is not the experience I had with him, and not the experience my mother had with him, not the experience anyone in my family had with him. So naturally, I'm trying to be polite while having terrible mental health issues at this point in my life. And, you know, the dizzy spells and everything else. And I've got my manager who's trying to get me to, you know, make a statement or something for my work colleagues, as if they're the most important people in my life right now. And keeps badgering me for what happened. And, you know, we just saw him and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know. I know what I was told, and it was complications due to COPD, which caused him to have a heart attack. That's what I know, and that is to this day what I know to be the case. So, you know, I have all of that going on, right? And everything else that's happening to me personally. Then I'm driving to this funeral and, you know, having these dizzy spells. I'm just emotionally and mentally drained, just really in a bad space. And I will always say this, it was really kind of, you know, my mental health was just in the worst space it could have been in. And I really truly felt like, you know, when I did come upon everything with, you know, manifesting and law of attraction, I was in such a bad mental health space that it was just like, what do I have to lose by trying this? You know what I mean? Like, what do I have to lose by trying this? By trying, you know, I'm already feeling like shit, mentally, emotionally, physically. You know, if I can think myself into a job that I don't hate, if I can think myself into, because I was legitimately afraid at that point, because I was hearing so much about death, and I had coworkers who were telling me about how, oh, my mom and my dad died 18 months apart. And I'm like, why would you tell me that after this? What the fuck is wrong with you? And, you know, everyone telling me about how great he was, and then telling me how they're so sorry for my loss. And I'm just like, I don't feel that. And so I was just in a really, really bad mental health space, to say the least, right? Just the worst mental health space. So when I found this thing that, you know, promised, hey, you can, you know, it's almost like we can fix your problems, right? It very much felt like I have to try this. I have to see, you know, if I can get myself out of this job, if I can get myself, you know, not focusing on this shit that's happened, then maybe things will be better, right? And I've talked about this too, is like, I've always known what I wanted. I've always known what I wanted to do with my life. I've known since I was, you know, 12 years old that I wanted to be a writer. I've been writing since then. So for me, I thought, okay, well, if I can manifest myself into a book deal, then great. And, you know, making my YouTube career pop off, then great. That's really what I wanted. I wanted to be successful enough, and I also wanted to get the fuck out of Nevada. I wanted to preferably move to the UK. That was my big dream, and it still is, but that was my big dream. I was researching that heavily. I really, really, really needed to get the fuck out of where I was, literally. And so I got really heavily invested into law of attraction and, you know, manifesting and all of that, and affirmations and positivity and gratitude and billionaire mindsets and all these things. And if you know anything about this, you'll know already that I was probably not in the best headspace to be entering into something like that, because one of the main tenets is that anything you think, good or bad or ugly, is being put out into the universe and brought back to you. It's like karma for the thought police, you know? And when you are in a bad mental health situation, and this is part of one of the many things I have a problem with when it comes to law of attraction and manifesting and all of that, is that when you're in a bad mental health space, you really don't have super lot of control over where your brain goes, right? So my brain was constantly hearing about death. And I thought, oh, okay, well, you know, my father just died. Even though I am in good health, somehow I'm terrified I'm going to be next. I am going to, like, from my anxiety, just, you know, just die for no reason at all. Or my mother will, or everyone will. And I just had so much fear about that. And I was afraid I was going to die at that job specifically. And so hearing this idea that, well, anything you think, you're manifesting into your life. So, I mean, not that, here's the thing, right? I mean, with death and where that's concerned, I mean, nobody's getting out alive, right? We all know that. We all understand that nobody is not dying. Like, that's just not how reality works. But when you are specifically afraid that you are going to die very young and at your desk in a job, I think that's like not a great place. And hearing this idea that like anything you think, you know, you're putting out into the universe and you're attracting it to yourself. And so I was getting into a very bad cycle, right? Of, I'm afraid this is going to happen. And because of that thought, I'm afraid that I'm manifesting it to myself. And, you know, so I'm just getting into this really, really dark mental spiral because of all of this. And I say all of this to say, right, that one of my biggest critiques and one of my biggest problems with manifesting and the law of attraction and all of this, these spaces, is that they don't take mental health into consideration. They don't take anxiety. They don't take depression. They don't take PTSD. They do not take intrusive thoughts or OCD or any of these things that people have and deal with that cause them to not entirely always be in control of their thoughts and thought patterns and so it doesn't take that into consideration at all. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg of shit I have a problem with and shit that I find deeply disturbing. Not the least of which is this idea that, you know, I remember one time, and the moment that kind of started changing my mind a lot was I watched this seminar from a person who is big in the manifesting space, who was talking about how, you know, they channeled messages from the universe, right? Okay, fine. But they were asked a question about this idea of like anything you think you're manifesting into your life. Anything, good, bad, or ugly. And they were asked for clarification, and I mean, they were really unequivocal in saying, when I say anything, I mean fucking anything. And it's like, well, if you take that to the extreme, you are saying someone who is in an abusive relationship manifested that for themselves. That's what you're gonna go with? No, I don't like that. It's a very victim blaming mentality, right? So that's another thing I have a problem with. I have a problem with this idea that you are the sole arbiter of anything good, bad, or indifferent that happens in your life. And what I also find funny is that there's this really weird dichotomy, right? Where it's like, your thoughts are responsible for what happens to you, but also you have to put it out into the universe. You have to speak it into the universe so the universe knows what you want, even though the universe is kind of also God, who you should believe in too. So that's yet another thing that I have a problem with. And somehow the universe does and doesn't know what you want already, so you have to speak it, but also it's you and your thoughts that are making it happen, but also the universe has to make it. It just is, so it doesn't make sense on its head, right? There's a lot of things that, you know, and again, I don't have a problem with it. I'm not here to tell anyone that they're wrong or they're stupid or they're foolish for believing in this. That is not my issue. My big issue, though, comes with, like I said, all of the mental health stuff and all of the victim blaming stuff. But I also have an issue with the fact, right, that I do find so much, and this is the crux of this video, right? And this is one of my biggest beefs. I do find that a lot of the community where people talk about manifesting and law of attraction, as much as I think it's meant to be a positive thing, it's just repackaged Christianity for New Age atheists, and it is at its very heart just capitalism for, you know, Gen Z and millennials who maybe know better, but, you know, they let themselves get pulled into these capitalist traps. Because why is the ultimate thing that you should be striving for, this billionaire mindset? Why is it that what we think is the most important thing is that you manifest millions or billions for yourself? And you have to rethink your relationship with money, because money isn't actually the root of all evil. And that's fine. I can respect that as a concept. But we have to be able to acknowledge wealth inequality. We have to be able to acknowledge class disparities. We have to be able to acknowledge the fact that millionaires and billionaires, but especially billionaires, are an increasingly shrinking group of people who are making it harder and harder for anyone to have any type of wealth, and who hoard their wealth constantly, and who make it impossible for anyone to do anything in this world. And like this idea that like, well, actually, you know, wealth is unlimited and there's enough money for everyone. And like, yeah, there is, but also it's being hoarded. And we're not talking about that. We're just talking about how you can manifest yourself into a billionaire. And I can't help but think, if we have this unlimited power, right, with our thoughts, if we have all this unlimited power where we can manifest any type of thing that we want, why aren't we manifesting wealth redistribution? Why aren't we trying to manifest not having billionaires? Why aren't we trying to manifest a better world for everyone instead of this individualistic ideology, right? Why is the focus always on what you accomplished by yourself, but maybe also with the universe, but like mostly by yourself? When we know that in order for billionaires to exist, there have to be people under them that are being exploited, right? So you think about it and you think, okay, who are the type of people who are wanting to manifest things in their life? It's people who want things to be different for themselves. They're people who are working this dead-end job that they hate, and their boss is an asshole, and they're just miserable, and maybe they have their own business that they want. Usually that's the case in a lot of these manifesting circles. I feel like I was kind of the outlier there who didn't really have any kind of business adventure of my own that I really wanted. I mean, I think owning a makeup company would be great, but at the end of the day, I'm not like trying to necessarily be a businesswoman. I wanted to be an author and a YouTuber, and I still do, and that's like my big dream. But, you know, those are the things that I'm doing, right? Those are the things that I want. But, you know, at the end of the day, having money, I think, is a means to an end, and having a lot of money is a means to a few ends. Because while we also say that money can't buy you happiness, it can certainly give you comfort and get you out of situations, and it can make it so you're not working a job that you hate that's like killing your spirit. And that's really where I was. I was in a job that I hated that was killing my spirit. And so this idea of, you know, manifesting myself into a millionaire, billionaire, whatever, in order to get away from that was very tempting. And so I understand that mindset and that desire to want for something better, to want to believe in something better, to need to believe in something better, because the world is complicated and it's awful, and sometimes it's not always awful, but sometimes it's very, very awful, and people are assholes sometimes for no reason, and you want to hope for something better, right? You want to hope for something better. You want to hope for a better world. You want to hope for something more hopeful. And so I think in that respect, manifesting holds a lot of appeal, right? It holds a lot of appeal. You're going to be able to see my ring light in this, aren't you? Okay. It holds a lot of appeal. And so it's understandable that this would become a bigger thing. And I think it became a lot bigger during the pandemic. And it's no coincidence that one of the most difficult years of my life, 2 years really, preceded the pandemic, because it was like 2018, 2019, and then pandemic was 2020. And I think 2020 was where things really felt like they were starting to get better for me. And in a lot of ways, mentally and emotionally, I did get better. But it did take a lot of work on my part. And it did take me stepping away from the manifesting world in order for me to do that. And I mean, I still talk about it sometimes in videos. You've seen those videos. If you've been on my channel, you can find them right now. You know, it's not that I think, again, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it, right? I don't think, and there are parts that I still do appreciate, you know. I am still a big believer in having a gratitude journal. I think gratitude is a very, very important thing, if for no other reason to remind yourself, especially if you're someone like me. I don't necessarily think that everyone needs to, if you're really just in the dirt and things are really fucked up for you, maybe gratitude journaling is not the most important thing to you. But like, having a gratitude journal, if you're someone who's maybe middle class or whatever, I think that's fine. That's something that you should be remembering, what you're grateful for and what you have that you're thankful for. I'm also, I love affirmations. I think they can be very inspiring. Whether or not they have any real application or real world value is irrelevant to me. What is important is that it's comforting, and that is important. And having hope, I think, is a good thing. I think finding the good in situations is not a bad thing. I think being a positive person, despite everything that's going on right now, is a very difficult thing, but a very important thing. We have to be hopeful that things like this cannot last. We have to be hopeful that everything going on in Palestine and Gaza has an end point. We have to be hopeful that somehow, some way, Israel will back the fuck off. We have to be hopeful for that, because if we're not, I think that's a very bad place to get into. I think it's a very bad place to become hopeless. And that is, I think, something people want, a certain group of people, certainly people who want you to feel hopeless and to look away. But I think it's important to be hopeful that there has to be change. There has to be something. And it doesn't feel like there's a lot you can do. And I know there's plenty of other creators who have talked about this. I am certainly not the first. I will certainly not be the last. And it's tricky, right? It's very, very tricky. You feel helpless and hopeless. And so I don't think that, finding positivity in things and finding the brighter side, I don't think those are bad things. But I recognize, and I think it is important to recognize, that you have to always consider the source of who's giving you a piece of information. And the people who are the most benefiting from, all of these law of attraction and manifesting spaces, and, there's YouTubers who talk about it, who are making money off of people's desires and hope for a better future. There's people who are life coaches and gurus who are making money off of people's desire. And a lot of them say things like, if you really believed in this dream, you'd invest everything you have, your last, $20 to buy my course. And it's like, that's not okay. That's like, why is that the thing that you think is acceptable to say to someone? And like, that's how you prove to the universe that you really want this, is that you're willing to give up every last dime you have for it. And I'm so fortunate that I did not go down that particular path, because I could have. Thankfully I didn't. Thankfully I kind of saw enough to see, okay, this is not the tea. This is not what we should be doing. But, there are people who fall very deep into this. I did buy a lot of books. I think that kind of put me down that rabbit hole. I bought The Secret. I have it somewhere. The book talks about how, like, Newton and Plato and Socrates and all these people, supposedly had, what the secret is and law of attraction and all of that, like, in their work. But they don't include any quotes from them. They don't include any sources that kind of prove that. And what I think is so funny is, like, even if they had, I don't actually care. Like, just because someone's a great philosopher or a good philosopher doesn't mean they're right about everything. I mean, a lot of the ancient Greek philosophers also believed that women belonged in the home. So I don't necessarily trust them just because they might have believed in something that 200 years later we now have decided is a thing again. And I do want to point out that I think, I was, as much as I credit, the internet for making this a thing and for, me falling into this rabbit hole, right? Because I started looking it up more, and so the algorithm pushed it more. And so, you have YouTube pushing this algorithm to show me more of this content. You have Instagram pushing me this algorithm, TikTok, Pinterest, all of these different things where if you start searching things, your algorithm changes. And that's all you see. I ended up following numerologists, tarot readers, and general accounts that I would post what I would call general positivity memes, or like money affirmation memes usually, sometimes source messages. It kind of depended, as well as YouTube gurus and life coach experts, all thanks to the algorithms of these various platforms, all of which create this feedback loop echo chamber that creates incels and TERFs. I'm not necessarily equating law of attraction gurus to incels or TERFs. I'm just explaining that the algorithm that is used by YouTube to create these sort of echo chambers of positivity, often even toxic positivity, are also the same echo chambers that create incels, the alt-right, and TERFs. And the thing is, you find yourself a very rational person thinking to yourself, well, what if it's not a coincidence? I feel like to some degree, we all kind of believe this idea that everything happens for a reason, right? It's sort of this idiom that we've all sort of just heard from birth. We just know everything happens for a reason, right? Especially if you're any kind of Christian or Catholic, I feel like that's just something that is like bred into you. And so in that way, I feel like not believing in coincidences is just something that kind of comes with the territory. Maybe I'm just way projecting there. And so you get these TikTok videos that are like, you know, it's no coincidence that you saw this video was meant for you. And it's like, well, it's not a coincidence because I was looking this information up and now my algorithm is full of this because TikTok has decided that if I'm searching this, this is what I want to see permanently. You know what I mean? And so you have to spend time now undoing that algorithmic nightmare. So you're not looking at this constantly. And I had to do that with Instagram. I had to do that with all of my social media accounts because it became a thing where I could not avoid it. Some of it was perfectly innocent. You get little affirmation memes that pop up that's like, you know, something like, I will be the first millionaire in my family or billionaire in my family or whatever. Or I'm going to take care of my family. I'm going to buy this house. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this. And that it starts small like that. And then suddenly you're just down this rabbit hole that is almost cult-like in its way. And you have something like, you know, people talking about lower vibrational people and how you have to cut them out of your life because they're going to drag you down with them. And suddenly you're in Scientology where you're cutting people out because they're not as evolved as you. And it's just like, really, is that what we're doing here? That's really upsetting and that's really weird. So, you know, those are definitely things that I have a problem with. And again, you know, there's all these people who are making a lot of money off of the backs of people's desires and dreams. And that isn't something new, right? That's always been a thing, I think, that is just a product of capitalism. But I think the pandemic definitely made it worse. And I think a lot of us realized life is too short to be working in a dead-end job that doesn't care about what happens to you, right? We've realized that life is too short to be stuck in a situation that makes you miserable. And for me, you know, being in that dead-end job where my father worked and where when he died, it's like they sent me flowers and then harassed me for weeks on end about how did he die? Can you make a statement? Are you going to fill out an obituary? Which, by the way, obituaries are $800. So no, I did not have that kind of money, and I was not going to spend that on a man that I didn't have a good relationship with. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? So that I was constantly harassed by my manager about for like weeks and weeks. And then life moves on. I still had to work. I still had to do my job. I still had to perform all of my duties as a supervisor. That didn't change. Nothing changed at all. So it's like this company, yeah, pretends to care, but only insofar as it's useful to them, as it's beneficial to them. And then eventually they hire someone new to replace him, and that's it. And that company didn't care about you as a person. That company didn't even recognize you were gone. I think a lot of this is repackaged Christianity, which again, that's not a read on Christians. I think there are plenty of great Christians and fine Christians, but there is a thing where, you know, Christian fundamentalism is become very, very disgusting in this country. And we have seen what it does. And there's, you know, it's interesting because my mother has been a Catholic for most of my life, and she's kind of pulled back on that. And the reason is because, you know, she's a very big believer that you should, you know, your family always has to come first, before your religion, before anything else. It's your family, it's your children especially, and she's always put me before anything else. And so when churches say, well, God hates gay people or God hates trans people or anything like that, she's like, no, 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 no. Even if that was true, I'm not going to be a part of any religion that is going to tell me I can't, be with my child or anything like this. She's like, no, I'm not doing that. So I respect that a lot. And she's pulled back from a lot of Christianity and Catholicism because she sees what's going on. And it's like, she's always flabbergasted because it's like there's a separation of church and state. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state. And it's just like, yeah, but no, that's most of our laws are based on Christian ideology, and that's just what it is. And it has been for a very long time. That's a tangent, but it's hard not to see the way people talk about like manifesting and law of attraction and how you have to believe in a higher power. I remember reading this book. I think it was something about, not the girl boss book, but it was like a yellow book by this woman who was talking about like unfucking your life. No, it wasn't unfuck your life, but it was something like you're amazing, whatever, something like that, right? Jen Sincero, if that, I know I'm not the first person to talk about her. Safi reads books or writes books. Safi? I can't think of people's names right now. I'm so sorry. But this YouTuber that I follow who has a reading channel, there's this book that I read of hers. And one of the things she says in it is like, you have to believe in a higher power. And yeah, usually people say the universe, but also it's like, it's just God. It's just they want you to believe in God. So it's like new age ideology, but with the same old Christian fundamentalism. And the thing is, like, I read Think and Grow Rich as a child. My father was very big into me reading that, so it was very important to him that I read that. And he also made me, meditate, which I hated as a kid. I didn't feel any benefits of it as a child. That's a whole other point. And he was big into, all of these things that would become manifesting in law of attraction. He believed in it then. Didn't change anything in his life, but that's not the point. And this isn't, by the way, this is not a video of me saying I did all these things and it still didn't work. I did do all those things, and I do believe that there are some things that have changed in my life for the better, but a lot of those were things I had to put in the work for. My mental health got better because I saw a fucking therapist. My physical health got better because I saw a doctor who found out that I had a vitamin D deficiency and said, your vitamin D is at a 5, it's supposed to be at a 25, you need to take medication for this right now. And so it was just little things. And of course, again, it's stress management. So I still do get dizzy spells occasionally, and it's stress management. And all of those were things that I had to do on my own. All of those were things that I had to take care of. And, to a certain degree, I do believe, visualization. I think being trans is a perfect example of that, because when I was in high school, I imagined myself all the time as a woman. And I definitely believe that, I visualized myself as that, and here I am. Yes, I visualized her as having more money, and I visualized her as being thinner, but hey, you can't get everything, right? So that is not the point of this video. It's not the point to say I did all these things and it didn't work out anyway. But the point is to call out the very real issues, right? This, manifesting in the law of attraction does not take into consideration class disparities. It does not take into consideration all of the many problems with millionaires and billionaires. It does not take into consideration, I think, the toxic work environments that are created by these people. You don't have to research all that hard to hear the horror stories. So knowing that, do you really want to become a billionaire? Like, do you really want to and you could say to yourself, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to fall down these traps. But I think we've kind of established that you can't become a billionaire and not do those things, right? There's no such thing as an ethical billionaire. Even if they donate money to charity, it amounts to pennies compared to what they're making. I don't think people really understand how much $1 billion really is, because it's such an unfathomable amount of money. When you say it's 1,000 million, it's like, that doesn't really compute, but that's what it is. And, if you think, oh, 1 million, that's, that's whatever. $1 million probably doesn't get you as much these days as it used to, but you can live comfortably off a couple million. But like $1,000 million, $1,000 million, that's, and everyone says like you could not spend that money in your, if you lived to be 1,000 years old, you wouldn't spend that much money. You just couldn't. And yet spending it on other people and using that money to help people who very badly need it. You know, every billionaire could give up all their wealth, not even give up all their wealth. They could give every person, you know, $100,000, maybe more, and still end up richer at the end of it. And we know this because there is the ex-wife of, I think Elon Musk, or the ex-wife of, no, the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, actually, who got a lot of money in the divorce settlement and is trying to donate all of it. And she cannot donate it fast enough because she's still making more money at the end of all these big, huge donations that she's making. And so you realize that the system is set up in such a way that even if these billionaires donated every single penny that they could, they would still end up richer than when they started. But that is not a consideration. And so when you're talking about manifesting yourself into billionaire status and the billionaire mindset, it's not even a consideration that you would want to manifest a wealth redistribution so that other people, and not even have to be millionaires, but have enough money that owning a home isn't just a pipe dream, that owning a home is something that anyone could do. Anyone could just own a home. Why is this something that you have to have like millions of dollars to buy a home? Why is that a thing? And why are we okay with that? You know, what happened to dollar menus at places? That doesn't exist anymore. Even the dollar store is not a fucking dollar anymore. Like, and this is just where we're at in our society. And it continues to be a thing. I worked for a company, my last job was a company who regularly sent us emails about how much money they made during their big sales. And I remember seeing this email about how last quarter they made like $3 billion, and yet they had laid off so many people. And it just fascinates me, right? That there are these companies who, as they get bigger and as they make more money, and it's not just them, you know, game developing companies do this all the time. There's a whole channel dedicated to every time this happens. Jim Sterling, who is amazing. You know, there's all of these companies who get more and more money and who lay people off because even though they're making tons of money, they have to be perpetually growing. And that is capitalism at work. And you want to be a part of that, right? You want to manifest that for yourself. You want to manifest a billionaire mindset so you can become this person. And it's not that money is the root of all evil. It's that people in their quest for wealth do really shitty things a lot of times. And it's just normalized. And this is just normalized. And I think the problem is, you know, with manifesting and law of attraction and things like that, is like, it's so mainstream at this point. You know, Elle magazine can run, or I've seen Glamour very specifically. I was looking something up, and Glamour magazine had an article about vibrational energy. And, you know, Oprah talks about this and has all these spiritual leaders and shit like that on her program. And it's like, celebrities constantly talk about this and constantly talk about, oh, you know, manifesting. But then when you ask them about whether or not they ever imagined becoming as big of a celebrity as they are, they will tell you, no, I never imagined that. And it's like, well, part of manifesting is you have to imagine that, right? Like you're putting this thing out to the universe, you're manifesting it, you're imagining it, visualizing it, you're writing it down, you're speaking it out loud, but also keeping it to yourself, but also putting it out into the universe, but also like you have to visualize it, but you have to let it go, right? You can't be actively thinking about it all the time because then it won't come true. But if you're afraid of something, that will come true faster, because it's like, why is that the case though? Why is it if you're afraid of something, it'll manifest to you faster? Like if you're afraid of success, does that mean you'll get success? Because there are people, I've genuinely felt that sometimes, where I am afraid of success. And it's like, because I wonder if I'm good enough for it or if I'm worthy of it or whatever. And it's just like, well, but it's not, it doesn't compute, right? And then you have the aspect of it that has become more increasingly noticeable to me because I've been watching a lot of science YouTube. I've been watching these two very specific astrophysicist YouTubers who talk a lot about science communication. There's this one that I love, Angela Collier, who is, if Jenny Nicholson was an astrophysicist. It's like they have the same energy, they have the same like speaking tone, like they're very, very similar, right? And what I love about her is she talks a lot about like science communication and how people sometimes misinterpret data to say what they want, right? And so you see this all the time, and you see this thing that happens a lot in manifesting spaces where they love to use quantum mechanics as like an explanation for why everything in the universe is connected and why your thoughts manifest things into reality. And it's all this, you know, as Angela likes to say, quantum, quantum, quantum. It's this idea that quantum mechanics is the answer for all of these things, and that it makes it so this is why this is true. And clearly science, as quantum mechanics becomes more studied, is proving these manifesting people right. And like, just for a second, I do want to take a step back and like just do a little thought experiment with you, if I may, right? Because if my thoughts control things and your thoughts control the universe, and all 8 billion humans in the world and maybe some very intelligent animals thoughts control the universe, whose thoughts exactly are we listening to, or is the universe listening to? Surely to some degree, I guess the answer must be all of our thoughts, but like at some point they have to cancel each other out, right? At some point, your thoughts and my thoughts have to cancel each other out. Because if you're thinking, I want to win $1 million, and someone else is thinking, I don't want that person to win $1 million, whose thoughts are going to win in that? Is it just whoever's thoughts are the strongest? And like, I realize that's kind of a ridiculous argument, but you have to understand where I'm coming from here. If all of our thoughts control the universe and expand it infinitely, at what point do people's thoughts cancel out? Hell, even my thoughts contradict at times. Frankly, this video is proof of that. But it's really what it is, if you read the papers, is it's you taking a piece of information that you believe agrees with what you're saying, taking it out of context and saying, look, the science agrees with me. And people do this with the Bible too. You know, I was formerly Catholic for many, many years, so I'm well aware of how people do this with the Bible. They take out little things and they say, look, the Bible says gay people bad. And we're going to ignore the part about any animal with cloven hooves, and we're going to ignore the part about shellfish and mixed wools and all of these things. We're going to ignore that part. But the Bible does say gay bad, witch bad. I'm 0 for 2 there. So it's just like, it's a thing that people do, right? You take the context that says what you agree with already, and you say, look, this proves that I'm correct. And I'm not going to do that here because I don't really need to. I'm talking from my own experiences. And again, if you have anecdotal stories about how, you know, manifesting and law of attraction works for you, that's great. You know, I can't deny that, again, I do think a lot of the principles, I think gratitude is a good thing. I think hope is a good thing. I think believing in a better future for yourself is a good thing. And I do, to an extent, believe that when you are more willing to believe in the good of things, you are more willing to try something. You're more willing to push yourself out of your comfort zone. I don't think those are bad things, right? But I would argue that there are consequences and there are bad things that can happen. And my experience as someone who, you know, was in a very bad mental health space of hearing that anything I thought or anything that crossed my mind, whether or not I was thinking it actively, and of course, the more you try and stop thinking about something, the more that thought just keeps going. You know, when you hear that, oh, you're manifesting that to yourself, that just drags things down, you know? And so if you're someone who's experienced those things, right? You've experienced PTSD, or anxiety or depression or anything like that, it's this thing where you don't always, it's not always, you're not always capable of controlling that situation, right? I talked in the beginning about how, a very bad blood test caused me to have a lot of anxiety, right? And, caused dizzy spells. I don't think it caused the dizzy spells. It just followed that the dizzy spells happened. But to this day, even though it was 5 years ago, to this day, when I get blood tests, I still have that anxiety of this experience that I had 5 years ago because it was so terrifying. And there's that PTSD. And when I recently had to get blood work done, I was literally getting blood work shaking, crying, knowing logically that I'm being ridiculous and knowing logically that this does not make sense and being terribly embarrassed by myself after it was all said and done. But it doesn't stop what's happening. The anxiety doesn't go away just because it's not logical. The anxiety doesn't go away just because that what you're feeling doesn't make sense, right? And so you have this situation where, for me, the anxiety was perpetuated by the dizzy spells, and the dizzy spells perpetuated more anxiety. And, it's a cyclical thing. One feeds into the other. And as I have later found, vitamin D does kind of correlate with your heart rate. And so when I was having anxiety and a fast heart rate, a lot of it was probably vitamin D related and stress related and everything else that I was going through at that time. I was reading this article for this video about where creativity comes from, right? And one of the things they were saying was, from what we've studied in other animals and humans alike, when you have things taken care of, right? When you have your bills paid, when you have food provided, when you have shelter, and you're not worrying about those basic things, you are able to be more creative. You are able to think outside the box and think of ways to do something different or better. And so I do have to wonder if this idea that no matter what situation you're in, you can just think yourself better. And it's like, but if you're not having your basic needs met, how are you going to have the energy to manifest something better or think yourself into a better situation? You don't even have your basic needs met. You don't even have the comfort of knowing that you are going to be okay and that you're not going to starve. If you don't have a roof over your head, if you don't have food regularly, if you don't have basic needs met, your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you don't have those basic fundamental building blocks of life met, how are you ever going to manifest anything for yourself? So this idea that no matter where you are, you can manifest yourself better, no matter if you're in some war-torn country, and that is something I've read people say, you can just manifest yourself better. And it's like, that's no. People are, I hate to say this, people are dying, Kim. Like you cannot literally sit there and say that no matter where you are, you can just manifest yourself somewhere better. Because if you don't have the fundamentals of like what you need to feel safe and secure, how are you ever going to do that? How are you ever going to consider that? If you don't have a home, that's not your first priority. Your first priority is finding a place to live and finding food. You can't just, nobody's thinking about how to manifest $1 million in their pocket when they're not anywhere to live. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of ridiculous. Oh, by the way, this look, if you can't tell, is a slight take on Chappell Roan, because I think I'm a huge fan, and I think she is certainly proof of working hard and dreams coming true. And the reality is there are people who are making a lot of money off of this. There are people who are making a lot of money. Self-help is estimated to reach $56.6 billion in 2027. So just a few short years at this point. And The Secret is considered a self-help book. Never forget the fact that The Secret was not just a free ebook or a pamphlet. They were clearly trying to sell you something. There's the DVD version, the CD version, the 6 other books in the series version. They have live conferences. There's a lot to sell that fantasy. And look, to be totally honest, even your time is a currency. Even if someone is giving away this information on YouTube, they're still selling something. Maybe they're selling their Patreon, patreon.com/NarcissisDeville. Maybe they're selling a course. Maybe they're just selling their services as a life coach or a guru. And look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money from what you do. I'm certainly proof of that. I do get kind of paid by YouTube when you watch these videos. I have mid-roll ads on. So like, I am part of the problem, I guess. But I'm also not trying to sell a lifestyle, and I'm certainly not trying to promote this idea that you can, if you pay me, I can teach you how to think yourself skinny or wealthy or whatever. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, you know, I think The Secret very much opened the doors to this self-help world of, you know, getting into the metaphysical. I guess the lesson here is manifest a blue streak in 2024 and like, comment, and subscribe. You can also join my Patreon, patreon.com/NarcissDeville. I think it's very interesting that recently, along with the astrophysicist that I've been following, I've also been recommended a lot of anti-MLM content. Now that's multi-level marketing for those playing the home game and not, as my gay brain would have thought, men loving men. I've written enough of it, so. And like, I do find it very fascinating how much, when you hear and see clips of these MLM conferences, how much they seem to have in common with manifestation conferences and manifestation videos and mantras, and they're all playing the same sort of content. And I feel like, I could be wrong, but I'm sure if you're part of an MLM, they're probably sending you the same type of like self-help gurus that you can find on YouTube that are talking about law of attraction, that are talking about positivity and affirmation, grow your business into the billions. Like, I can almost guarantee, like, I can't help but find there might be something there. You know what I mean? And like, telling you that you're in control of the situation and that if you're not successful, it's clearly something you're doing wrong. It's always the blame on you. It's never the company. It's never the product. It's never that this is an MLM that's built to make the people on top even more wealthy. That's never taken into consideration. It's always your fault. And it's very interesting how much this plays into what we already know about manifestation and law of attraction. This idea that you're not successful unless you spend every last penny you have attending a conference with information that you can't possibly get anywhere else. And like, really? And it's all the same bullshit. It's all the same motivational speeches. And I'm not saying that motivational speeches are bad, but I find it interesting that they expect you to spend all of this money so that they can get richer with the promise that you will eventually get richer yourself. It's, again, going back to the concept that I have been talking about this whole video, it's selling the fantasy. And look, maybe it is a total coincidence that a lot of life coaches and gurus are attending these MLM conferences as guest speakers. Maybe it is a total coincidence that one of the biggest life coach, guru, whatever shit, Tony Robbins, attends MLM conferences as a speaker. Maybe that is a total coincidence and has nothing to do with anything else he stands for. And like, honestly, I don't even have time to go into him. There are definitely other YouTubers who have gone into him. I'm not even gonna try. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video, though, is to talk about the fact that like, this person is doing this thing, but also speaks on the same topics of like using affirmations to get what you want, visualizing yourself as a millionaire and it will happen, and all this other stuff. And it's just like, my dude, my guy, What are we not seeing here? I'm not saying that there isn't a good side to like positivity and affirmations and believing in yourself and all of these things. But I just can't help but notice there are a lot of people who jump onto this self-help train in order to make themselves richer by jumping onto people's vulnerabilities. Because as I've talked about throughout this video, is that shit's hard right now. Shit is hard for everyone. I literally had a job interview the other day. It was a 2-part interview. The first part went great. And during the first part of that interview that somehow went great, I literally started crying in the middle of it because it was a customer service job. And I realized that if I got this job, I was going to have to go back to customer service, which is such an exhausting prospect to me. So I literally just started tearing up a little bit. And thankfully they didn't see me. It wasn't like a video thing. I was quiet about it. But I was just like, and I didn't get the job, but it doesn't matter. But like, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't blame anyone who falls into an MLM. And I certainly don't blame anyone who turns to things like manifestation and law of attraction, because it's like, you need to believe that there's something better. You need so desperately to believe that there has to be something better, because fuck it all. You know, we're all Dolly Parton and we are all working that 9 to 5 and we are all hoping that someday, somehow the tide is going to turn and it's all going to turn our way. Praise Dolly. Because I'm kind of at the point where this video is probably already going to be 2 hours, like maybe 20 of which were me doing the first makeup look. And now I'm in this makeup look and I'm not going to explain why. You're never going to know. It's just a mystery. Why am I in this makeup look? Why am I in a different outfit? You don't know. Does it matter? Is it going to stop you from watching this video? Probably not. My final point that I think I have to make here is just like, not for nothing, but a lot of the people who are promoting a lot of this, who are, especially MLMs, but a lot of people who are promoting things like law of attraction, manifesting, are already successful. It's already a lot of celebrities who are promoting this. Oprah is promoting this. People who have already made their millions and who don't need manifestation or law of attraction. And like, so many of them are like, oh, I put this out into the universe. And it's like, did you say it on a public platform where literally anyone could hear you, and so you could just have it happen because you already have a huge fucking platform? If you already have millions of people watching you every goddamn day, saying something publicly does not suddenly make it you manifesting it. It's you said something publicly and someone else who saw it, who's, you know, a fan of your work, was like, oh yeah, I want to work with you too. You didn't manifest that. You just fucking asked for it. Like, it's not the same thing. And like, we all know part of this is like, America loves a self-made man story. America loves the whole thing of someone pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. We want to believe in like this American dream. We want to believe so badly that this is real and it's attainable. It's attainable for you and me, and we need to believe it, because if we don't, everything would shut down. Like, America thrives on this because the world would shut down, or not the world, America would shut down. Like, if everyone everywhere realized how bullshit most of this is, it would shut down. It would shut the fuck down. Because as much as billionaires want to talk about how they create all of the capital and it trickles down to the rest of us, it fucking doesn't. What the fuck is that? And if you think about that, if you really think about the fact that everything you work so hard for, ultimately, everything costs so much money, and fucking jobs aren't going up. You're not getting paid more. More people are getting laid off as companies are making more and more and more. And capitalism is a fucking curse, but we're all trapped in it. And that is the problem. That is the problem. We are all trapped in this. And if we acknowledge that, if we acknowledge what a trap capitalism is, and we acknowledge it, everything comes crumbling down. So we don't acknowledge it. We have to just pretend it's not real and get on with our day and ignore the inequality and ignore everyone else's pain, including our own. Because if we don't ignore it, then we're going to break down. Then we're going to have a fucking breakdown where we're crying in our cubicle at work, or we're crying in the bathroom because it's less embarrassing somehow if you're crying in the bathroom. Fucking God knows I've cried enough times in the bathroom at my day job. So like, you know, it's just like, it's so exhausting to live in this world. It truly, truly is. So I don't in any way blame anyone who wants to believe in this. I don't blame anyone who gets into manifesting and law of attraction and really, really, truly believes in it. But I do think it's taking advantage of people. And I do think that it's using toxic positivity. And I do think that a lot of these beliefs are harming people's mental health. And I actually have a little bit of proof to back that up. Back in 2021, the Washington Post ran a really great article talking about manifesting, what it is, what it means, and sort of the dark side of manifesting. And I want to read to you these quotes that I found that were just so helpful to me personally, now that I've seen them. I wish I had seen them back in 2021, but that's okay. And one of them is from a woman called Thea Gallagher, who is a director of the outpatient clinic of the University of Pennsylvania Center for the Treatment and Study of Anxiety. The article says, Gallagher warns that manifesting can be harmful to people with anxiety, especially for those who struggle with intrusive thoughts. Some of her patients, for example, believe that if they think something bad is going to happen, such as a loved one being in an accident, they will accidentally cause it to occur. This illustrates how the very idea of manifesting is sticky. And like, yeah, I've fallen down that trap. I have worried about that many a time. And guess what? Because of just intrusive thoughts and like being a writer, and sometimes your thoughts are dark, sometimes you're imagining that. We've all had that dream where we drive off a cliff for no reason. Is that visualization? Is that something like, should we be worried about our nightmares next? I'll give you another quote from that same article. Ariella Wasserman, psychologist at NYU Langone Health. In therapy, we teach people they are not their thoughts, and just because they think something, it does not mean that that thing will actually happen. We work a lot on helping people separate their thoughts from actual reality, especially the negative ones. And like, as someone who has dealt with anxiety, as someone who has dealt with depression and intrusive thoughts, and like just, I talked about this in one of my other videos about how like when I had to get my blood work done, and earlier in this video, I talked about what happened one of the times I got my blood work done. And like, because of that incident, because of the PTSD of that, sometimes when I get blood work, I get shaky. I'm like tearing up, like trying to like not freak out while I'm getting my blood work done, to the point that when it's finally done, I'm so embarrassed by how I was acting and like how I got, because of my anxiety, even the whole time knowing that it's not logical, knowing that this is ridiculous and there's no reason to feel this way, and it's never happened any of the other times, and you keep water and you keep an applesauce just so you have that extra sugar, but you're also eating because it's not a fasting blood work, and you also make sure that you do this early enough in the morning so you're not going to be starving all day. All of those things combined, and I still have that anxiety, because guess what, Linda? You can't actually think away your anxiety. Knowing that something is illogical does not make it go away. Knowing that your anxiety has no basis in reality doesn't stop it from happening. It just doesn't. And we have to be willing to be okay with that. We have to be willing to forgive ourselves for whatever the fuck our thoughts are, because your thoughts are not reality. And it's a very dangerous thing to tell people who have anxiety, who have depression, who have all these other things, that their thoughts are reality and bring things into reality. Why? Why would you tell people that? What is that about? Who benefits from you believing in that? And it's so frustrating to me, because I know I'm not the only one. And that's why I'm making this video ultimately, because I know I'm not the only one who's ever dealt with this. I know for a fact I am not the only person who has ever felt this way. And it's frustrating because there is just this fear. And you know what? When I went to therapy in 2020, while I was dealing with all of this, anxiety and like feeling like I was to blame for my own anxiety, and I was to blame with all this, manifesting stuff that I was still in the middle of at that point. When I went to a therapist, I never even brought up that aspect of it, because it was so embarrassing to me. And this is how it continues. That's how the cycle continues, because you're embarrassed by your own reaction to things. You're embarrassed by the fact that you feel like you're failing at thinking correctly. Do you understand how like deeply fucked up that is? To be like, I'm failing at thinking correctly. I'm failing at thinking correct thoughts. And that's why I'm not successful. That's why I'm not, a millionaire, billionaire boss babe. That's why I'm not thin. That's why I don't have love, because I'm not thinking correctly. I'm not thinking correctly because you can't find love until you love yourself, right? What is this? Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we do this to other people? What are we doing? Why all the self-blame? Where does this come from? I know where it comes from. It's like a religious thing. It's a Christian thing. It's a Catholic thing. It's a fundamentalist thing. But it's so dark-sided. And look, I think if anything is proof of what a collective example of manifesting something and pretending like this is what's happening and faking it till you making it gone horribly, horribly wrong is the fact that we've all kind of just decided that COVID is over, except for the fact that people are still getting sick. People are still dying, Kim, but we're all pretending like it's done. We're all pretending like it's all coming up Millhouse. I don't know why I just said that. It's because I was watching Angela Collier and she made that joke, and so now I'm making this joke. It's cyclical. Like, we're all just pretending that it's over. We're all just going about our day. And again, I've been guilty of it. I can't say that I haven't. It is the clearest example to me of a, manifesting experiment gone totally wrong. And I think I talked about this in my main footage, but I'll put this in here again just in case. If your thoughts create reality, right? And your belief creates reality, and you just deep in your soul believe that the earth is flat, does that mean it's going to be true? I mean, it's true for you, but that's not what people say, right? When people say you create your reality, they don't say it's true for you, but not necessarily true in general. And I feel like it's at least a little more honest to say that you create your own reality and that's true for you. Whether or not that's true for everyone is a different story, right? We create our own realities, we create our own mythologies. That I can agree with. That I think is pretty, logical. We often create our own logic and mythologies and whatever else, and we believe what we want to believe. So I get that. I understand that as a concept. But this idea that your thoughts shape reality and it's a reality that's shaped for everyone, that I think is a little more disingenuous, personally. And again, I do feel like it's somewhat hypocritical as someone who calls themselves a witch. What is a prayer but manifesting? What is a spell but manifesting but another name? I will say, I do feel as though this trend has definitely died down quite a bit from where it was in 2020. I don't see it as much, and maybe it's because I've gotten out of that orbit. I know it still exists. I know it's still there. It's always kind of on the periphery for me. But I feel like it seems to have died down. Maybe I'm wrong. If you're in the middle of it, maybe you were recommended this video because you've been in this cycle, and I hope that's the case. Look, I'm a relatively small channel at the time I'm making this video. I'm hoping, if nothing else, the people who are recommended this video are people who are otherwise in this cycle. Because I want to be this voice as someone who has gone through this and sharing my experience and sharing my story and saying, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to blame yourself. You don't have to believe that your thoughts are creating any bad things in your life. You can just, I think maybe we need to be neutral about our thoughts. Maybe we need to say, look, positive thoughts, negative thoughts, thoughts are just thoughts. It's not about you. Your thoughts are not you. And I think that's maybe a good thing, because there is something very unhealthy about telling yourself that if you think bad things, then bad things will happen to you. I don't know that that's necessarily the lesson that we should be teaching people. It's it can happen to anyone, anytime. Because it's hard to live under capitalism. It's hard to live in this world. And you want so badly for things to be better. And I'm gonna keep saying this. And it's not that I don't believe in a positive future. It's not that I don't have hope. I have always, always believed that I was meant to be successful. I've always believed that I was going to be a successful author, whatever that means to you, whatever that means to me. I've always believed that, right? I went into YouTube believing that I would be successful at that. So I am a proponent of positive thinking, and I am a proponent of positivity in general. But I also know that depression is real and anxiety is real. And these are things, and mental health, people have bigger issues than even anxiety and depression. Like, mental health issues are real, and they are things that need to be accounted for. And so, no, I'm sorry, you can't just think yourself positive. You can't just think yourself happy. I mean, you can, but that's called denial. And eventually you're gonna have to deal with those feelings. You can't be happy all the time. And that's okay. It's okay to not be happy all the time. It's okay to admit that you're upset and frustrated. And yeah, I don't think you should necessarily let it bog you down if you can help it. But it happens. Depression is real. I go through cycles of it periodically. It's just what it is. And then you move on and you get through. And that's that. I feel like at the end of the day, you should take me with a grain of salt, because I'm just a person on the internet. But I also think you should take anyone else you hear with a grain of salt. Anyone who tells you that this is the answer and this is the only answer and anyone else is wrong or stupid or lying or whatever, take it with a grain of salt. Because at the end of the day, you have to be the one to make these decisions for yourself, not anyone else. But I also think we need to consider, there's kind of this idea of what we owe each other, right? What do we owe each other as human beings? What is the base level that we owe each other? And I didn't come up with that, obviously. I've heard about it. I cannot remember where. I'll try and, it's this idea of what do we owe each other, right? I feel as though manifesting billions of dollars for yourself and your family and pretending as though you can do that without having to cause harm to other people in the process, I think it's very disingenuous. I think it's very unrealistic. I think it is not being honest with yourself or with anyone else. And that's the problem that I have at the end of the day, right? The problem that I have at the end of the day is that even if all things being equal, let's say you actually can think yourself to be a billionaire girl boss babe, whatever. Why is that the goal? Why is that the thing that you need to manifest for yourself? Why are we not manifesting just joy and peace on earth? Not to sound some hippy dippy whatever, but really truly, honestly, I'm not even being funny. Why do you want to manifest yourself billions and not a peaceful world? Not a world where, there isn't tons of photos just constantly flooding your feed of people being killed and starved and all of these things that are painful, and you can turn away, but wouldn't you rather use that manifestation power to make that just not a thing anymore? Wouldn't you rather use that power of manifestation to make the world a better place for everyone? I don't need $1 billion. I need everyone else to be taken care of enough so that we don't have these issues. I need a mental health access to be affordable enough so that people don't have to lose everything to medical debt. I need housing to be affordable. I need people who are houseless to be given the opportunity to have a home and to have someplace to live and eat and not have everything taken away from them every 5 minutes because it's illegal for them to live on the street. But where the fuck else are they gonna go? I need for us to manifest, if anything, if this is really real and this is something you can do and our thoughts create reality, then we need to use our collective thoughts to create a reality in which we are all equal and equitable and we are all taken care of. We need to create a reality in which we stop fighting about petty bullshit and take care of each other. That is what we need to manifest. I don't need to be a billionaire. You don't need to be a billionaire. Nobody needs to be a billionaire. Elon Musk does not need to be a billionaire. Billionaires don't need to exist. What does need to exist is people being given a living wage. Because guess what? You exist. And so we're going to pay you because you exist. We need to stop treating people who are on unemployment like criminals because of some bullshit Reagan said about welfare queens. We need to stop treating people of different races as if somehow they are less human than us. We need to stop treating people of different religions as if somehow they are less human than us. We need to stop treating people who are houseless, people who are disabled, people who are queer or anything else as if somehow that is a moral failing. Stop treating fat people as if that is a moral failure. That is what we need to manifest for this world. Nobody needs a fucking $1 billion. You don't need a yacht. You don't need to have a house in Hawaii. And in fact, get the fuck out of Hawaii because those people do not need more of your bullshit. That's what we need to manifest. Fuck your 12 dream houses, okay? We need to manifest a world. If that is what we can do, we need to manifest a world in which people are taken care of, okay? Where people, people always love to, Christians always love to do this thing. I'm getting off on a tangent, but just for a second. Christians always love to do this thing, right? Where they're like, oh, the person who was going to cure, they do this thing where it's like a conversation with God, and it's like, why didn't you cure cancer? And God's like, I gave you the cure for cancer, but you aborted him. Like, you know what? Fuck you. How about we talk about the people who could have cured cancer, who could have gone to medical school, but instead were kicked out of their house for being gay, and now they're fucking houseless, and they don't have opportunities. They can't afford to go to medical school. How about that? Don't sit there and come to me and talk to me about abortion rights or pro-life or whatever when you don't care about anything after they're born. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to fucking hear it. Okay? But I'm frankly exhausted. And look, one yelling bitch on the internet is not going to change the world. I would love to believe that I am special enough to do so. Maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe you will prove me wrong. Maybe miraculously this video will do numbers. I will get tons of subscribers, and that will change my world at the very least. This is the last I have to say about this. If this is a thing that you can do, ignoring all the science, ignoring everything else, that it's untestable, ignoring everything else, if you truly believe that you can think anything into existence, anything, why is it always so selfish? Why is it always materialistic? And I know they want to play this game of like, well, money's not bad, money's not evil. And I talked about this earlier in this video. I get it. And that's fine. Money doesn't have to be bad or evil. But why does it have to be about you? Why does it have to be about you making all this money? Why is that the goal? Why is that the most important thing that you can manifest? I'm genuinely curious. Because when I stopped to think about it, because there was a time when I fell into this trap. I will admit that. I will admit there was a time when I thought, God, billionaire, having that big crazy house, all this stuff that like says I've made it. Then I thought about it and I was like, why do I want that though? Why is that the thing that's the most important to me? Why is this thing that I believe should be the thing? You know what I mean? Why? Why does it have to be? Why does it have to be billions and millions? Why? It's such a specific number. And it's like they're obsessed with it. And like, why? Is it because we're all just suffering from capitalist brain rot? Is that what this is? That's exhausting. I don't want to deal with that. So this is a little note for the after credits. I thought this was really funny. While I was researching this script, I looked up some reviews on barnesandnoble.com. Why Barnes & Noble specifically? I don't know. I have a thing for them. So one of the reviews I thought was really funny. A lot of the reviews there's like two camps, right? Some of them are like, this is great. Some of them are like, this is bullshit. And some of them are like Christian and they're like, Jesus is the only way. Fine, whatever. But then there's weird other Christians who are like, this is what the Bible teaches. And I'm like, I study the Bible for a long time in Catholic school. I don't remember hearing about this in any of Jesus's teachings. I guess I missed the, and he said unto them, good vibes only.